Hello everyone. It is almost time for the annual fall Sephora sale, and so this sale starts on Halloween for Rouge members, and then it starts several days later for everyone else. And so for this video, I have gone through all of the products that I have tried out that are sold at Sephora, and I have picked out my favorite products by category, and so these are my own personal awards that I am giving to products that have really worked out for me personally. And then also for this video, for each category, I will be talking about the new products that have interested me and that I have either thought about purchasing or that I've actually been trying out. And this video has turned out to be fairly long, and so I'm going to be dividing it into two parts. So this part will include makeup for the face and cheeks, and then the second part will include makeup for the lips and the eyes and also skincare. And so first, a little bit of information about me. I am 61 years old, and I do have dry and very sensitive skin. And so I am particularly interested in products that make me look a little bit fresher and maybe a little bit younger. And certainly I'm not looking for products that make the wrinkles or other kinds of issues that I may have going on my face actually look worse. And then in addition, there are certain ingredients that I have found that always do irritate my skin. And I know that these ingredients tend to be very irritating for many other people as well. And so I just don't talk about products with those ingredients on this channel. And in addition, I have realized fairly recently that my skin really does much better if I just entirely avoid all kinds of fragrance in my skincare products, even if they are natural fragrances. And so for the skincare products that I discuss in this video, these will all be unscented products. And so first I thought I'd just give you my shopping list of things that I am thinking about picking up during the sale. And so if you have tried any of these products, then I would be really interested in your opinions about them. I can't pick up every single thing that Sephora sells, but I do try to pick up the things that I think that I would find to be most interesting and that people that watch this channel may find interesting. And then also what I have is a list of some of the holiday sets that are being offered, and I did talk about those holiday sets for the most part in my last video on new products. And so if you're interested in specifics on those sets, then you might look at that particular video. And I am hoping to, as my next video, to actually do a summary and a demonstration of the holiday sets and holiday special editions of products that I have picked up. And so hopefully that will occur pretty soon and before the Sephora sale is over. And in addition, a number of the brands that are sold at Sephora also are sold at Credo. And I did just do a video for the Credo sale talking about those brands in depth. And so if you are interested in my current opinions about the products from those particular brands, then you might take a look at that Credo video. And there are a couple of new brands at Sephora that I have yet to try out. And so the most prominent of these are Vanngo, which has been reviewed by a lot of people on YouTube. And so I'm thinking about buying some of the products from that brand during the Sephora sale. And then also Laura Geller is a brand that seems to have a prime target market of women who are more mature. And so I am interested in trying out that brand. I've never tried anything from them before. So I did order a few products from them. But if there are products from them that you have tried that you would like to encourage me to try or to discourage me from trying, then please let me know about that as well. And so let's start out by talking about foundations. And so I will start out with skin tints. And so as the best skin tint for 2025 that is available at Sephora, I will choose the Hourglass Veil skin tint. So this was released a couple of years ago, and I have found this to continue to be a really good product for me. It does not have any silicone in it, and I think that it does look really good on my skin. It is hydrating for my skin. And I think it performs a lot more like a silicone-based skin tint than many of the other products that are on the market. And so I have continued to really like this one. A new skin tint that was released just a month or two ago is the Gucci Glow Skin Tint, and I did do a whole video on this one, and I did like it quite a lot. And this is a silicone-based skin tint, but I have found that it performed pretty well for me, and so I would be interested in continuing to wear this into the future. And then a product that I have demonstrated on this channel in the past is the Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Skin Tint. And so this one is, I think this one does have some silicones in it, but I have liked this one. And a lot of people do really, really like this one. And then finally, I thought about giving this product an award all by itself, but I decided to just throw it in with the skin tints. And this is the One Size B12 Base Thinner. And so this is not really a skin tint in and of itself. What it is a product that allows you to take a foundation that you already have that may be a little bit on the thick side and to thin it down, and also to add a little bit of a shimmer to it and to make it more wearable. And I actually do really like this. And I have used it with a variety of different foundations that I have in my collection, and I do feel like it has worked really, really well with all of those. And so I am in the habit of taking a moisturizer and thinning down foundations that I have, and that works for me pretty well also. But I do think that this is a nice little product, and so I do think it's worth considering. And then for foundations that are offering a bit more coverage, for the non-silicone foundations, I am really still liking this Patrick Ta foundation, and that is what I put on my skin today. And I think especially as we move into winter, this is a really terrific foundation for me. It does have a lot of hydration in it, and I do think that it has enough body in it that it provides a little bit of a plump look to my skin that I think is really attractive. And I have found it to get along really well with my skin. It's not irritating at all, and I do think that it holds up a lot better than you might think. Now, I do have to use a setting spray with this if I want it to set down, and so usually I do use the Makeup by Mario setting spray. But if I do that, and then I usually put a little bit of powder on it as well, which I also did today. If I do both of those things, then I think that this foundation performs really, really well. And so as we move into winter, I'm going to be going back to using this product pretty regularly, I think. And then another foundation that does not include silicone that I think has performed quite well for me and for many other people is the NARS Light Reflecting Foundation. And so that one does not really have a lot of hydration in it, and it's more like a plain foundation. But I do think it works really well for me, and it is a foundation that I tend to be able to mix with moisturizer, and I do think that that makes it a nice, more of a skin tint type product. And then for foundations that do have silicones in them, we do have several options. So I think that I will still stick, though, with the House Labs Triclone Skin Foundation as my top pick. And so this one is made in Korea, and it is very thin, and it does come in a whole lot of shades. And I do think that this one performs really well. It's not irritating to my skin at all, and I do think it looks very natural on my skin, and so I have really enjoyed this one. But there are a few other products now that I think are also quite good, and so one of these is the new Makeup by Mario foundation that is called Natural Finish, and I did just review this one, and I compared it to another pick of mine, which is the Makeup by Mario Hydrating Foundation. And I think that both of these are very good, and they actually looked surprisingly similar on my skin. The only thing is that the Hydrating Foundation does have a lot of moisture in it, and I do feel like if I want that to set down and look natural, that I really need to use a setting spray and a little bit of powder on top of it. But if I do that, I think that that one works really well for me, and that I do enjoy using that one in the winter. And this one for me is more like a summer foundation, and they are suggesting that for people with normal to oily skin, but I think that even if you have dry skin or mature skin, that this is a foundation that I found to work really well for me as well. And another foundation that I was surprised that I really liked is the Huda Easy Blur foundation, and that was released last year, and I do think that that looks really natural on my skin. And they did just come up with the number of new shades, and so if you found in the past that you were not able to get a good shade match for yourself, then you might give that line another try. And then other foundations that were released this year from Sephora in the skin tint category, there is the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Skin Tint, and that is $38. And I tried that several times in the store, and I do have a sample of that. And so my hope is that soon I can do a quick video discussing all of the foundations that I haven't actually done full reviews for them. And I think that that foundation was okay. I don't feel like it was as good as many of the other foundations in my collection, but I don't think it was irritating to my skin, and I don't always do that well with Milk Makeup products, but I think that this one at least was not irritating, and I do think that there's some potential there, and so I do want to review that one. Another foundation that I reviewed in a full video is the new Natasha Denona High Glam foundation, and that one actually performed pretty well for me. I think it is fairly luminous, and it goes on kind of wet, and again, that is a foundation that I think I need to use a setting spray with, and again, this is a foundation that does stick to my skin really, really tenaciously, maybe even more so than the Fenty ones, and so that is another reason that I have not worn that one very much. I am really impressed with the color choices for this, and I do think that Natasha Denona put a lot of effort into coming up with good shades, and so you may find that you can get a particularly good match with this particular line. And if you are looking for a foundation that does stick well to your skin and that also does have a luminous finish, even if you have a more oily skin tone, this would be appropriate for you, so that is important to know. And then Lawless has a new foundation that is called Forget the Filler. And so I did try that on in the store a couple of times. And what I did find, first of all, is that it doesn't really have any really light shades in that line. So my skin is not really all that light. And I was able to wear their lightest shade, although I think that that was even a little bit too dark for me also. But I think that there are a lot of people out there that have skin that's much lighter than mine, and I don't think that they would have a good match in that particular line. So that's a little bit strange to me, but I do want to try that out on camera as well. I think that that one is okay. It's a heavier foundation, and so if you're looking for more coverage, then that one is probably going to be approaching more of a full coverage foundation. And I just saw on the Sephora website that they are launching a new budget foundation. And so this is called the Sephora Collection Best Skin Ever 16-Hour Natural Finish Liquid Foundation for $22. And so if there is a 30% discount on all of the Sephora Collection products, then that is quite an inexpensive foundation and actually less expensive than drugstore. And sometimes the Sephora Collection foundations, which are made by LVMH, that is something that sometimes I can wear, and so I probably will try that one out too, and then talk about that briefly on this channel. And now let's move on to color correctors, and this is a category that is pretty important to me because if I use a little bit of color corrector under my eyes, then I don't feel like I need to use as much concealer, and therefore the wrinkles and other issues under my eyes are not emphasized as much. And so one color corrector that I do use very frequently and that I do think is the best of category for me at Sephora is the Bobbi Brown Skin Corrector Stick. And so this is a product that I've been using for years, and I've gone through several of these so far. And I tend to alternate it with the product from Jones Road that is a corrector neutralizer stick. But I think that this one does go on really easily. It's not very dry, and it blends in really easily. And it is very convenient because I can just twist it up from the stick. And I do think that it works really well in terms of camouflaging my dark circles. And then as a runner-up, I would choose the Caloray Hideaway Concealer. And so this product was brought out, I think, the last year, but this year they have come out with some new shades, and so I do think that the shade that I picked up originally was a little bit too dark for me, and so I am interested in getting the shade that is a closer match to my complexion. And this does have warm and neutral and cool undertones to it, and so that is something that a lot of people may find to be attractive. Kosas also came out with the color corrector this year, and so this is called the Kosas Revealer Color Corrector, and so I did pick this one up, and for whatever reason I don't feel like I have worn this one as much. I think that the original Kosas Revealer Concealer was okay for me. I think it might not be as good as some of the more recent formulas of liquid concealers, and so maybe that is why I don't like this one quite as much, but in any case, I don't think this is a bad one, but I don't feel like it has performed well enough for me to actually give it an award. And then for cream concealers, Sephora does have several good ones. And the one that I have liked the most, and that is very expensive, but that I do think has been worth it for me, is the Tom Ford Traceless Soft Matte Concealer. This is $60. But what I will say is that I have never purchased an additional one of this, and I do use it from time to time. And I think that it has lasted a lot longer than I had thought that it was going to. And eventually I do want to buy another one of these, and maybe I should buy another one now and use it more often. But when I use this, I am really impressed with how it performs on my skin. And the shade that I have in this, in case you're interested, is Creme. And then I have 3 other cream concealers that I do alternate, and I think all of these work pretty well. And so the first one is again from Bobbi Brown, and so this one is about the same as the corrector stick from Bobbi Brown, except that it is in natural skin tones rather than corrector tones. And I think that this one has been fine for me too. I don't think that I like it quite as much as that Tom Ford one, but I think it's also been fine. And then Merit has a line of sticks that are called the Minimalist Complexion Sticks. And so eventually they did come out with a full range of shades in this, and so I do feel like I've finally gotten a decent match. And so I do think that this one works pretty well as a concealer stick that I can just scribble on various areas of my skin that don't look great and just rub it in, and it's super fast, and I think that this has performed fine for me. And then Westman Atelier has a foundation stick that I really only use as a concealer stick. I would never put this all over my face, and I'm not sure she's really suggesting doing that. And so this is called the Westman Atelier Vital Skin Foundation Stick, and it is $68, which used to seem very, very expensive, but now that the prices of everything else have gone up, this one is not seeming quite as expensive as before. The issue that I have with this is that it only is available in something like 20 shades, and I don't feel like I have an exact match with this, but I think it's good enough that if I'm just using it as a concealer that I can kind of blend it in, and it's not too bad. And I think that the formula on this one is nice. I think that actually it might be a little bit more inclined to make the wrinkles around my eyes look not great, and so I do tend to use it fairly carefully in that area, but in general I think this is a good product that I have also enjoyed. And then for liquid concealers, I am sticking with the CeraCreole Face Flex Concealer, and this is $58, but it includes quite a lot of product in this container, and so therefore if you calculate it on a per milliliter basis, it's actually less expensive than a number of the concealers that are out there. And I think that this has worked really well for me in terms of working nicely on my mature skin without exacerbating the look of the wrinkles. And it has been surprising how much I've liked this. And now they have come out with a few new shades, and I feel like there's still quite a bit left in this container, but I might purchase a new bottle of this during the Sephora sale and try out one of the other shades possibly. And then a concealer that I actually think has been very overlooked and that I think is actually fairly similar to the Sarah Creel one is the Say Slip Tint Concealer. And this one was released last year also, and it is $28, but you get much less of it in the container. So it's really only very slightly less than the Sarah Creel product in terms of cost per milliliter. And I also do like the Westmont Atelier Vital Skincare Concealer. This one is a little more expensive on a cost per milliliter basis. And I think that the issue with this is that a lot of people have found that they do not have a good shade for them. And I do feel like the shade that I have has worked out for me. But if you can't get a good shade, then that could be a problem. But other than that, I think it's a nice product. It is quite high coverage, and so therefore, if you are looking for something that is high coverage, then that would be one to try. And what I would suggest with this one is don't use very much of it because it does start to get very, very heavy concealing and start to look cakey if you use too much of it. But if you just use a tiny little bit of it, I think it works really well. And then other concealers that have been released this year. The first one is the Isamaya 5-Point Lift Concealer, and this one is not a concealer that actually conceals very much, and I think that what it does is just provide like a little bit of a plumped look to the skin. I did do a whole video on a variety of different Isamaya products, and I kind of liked the way that this looked on my skin. I thought that it gave my skin kind of a youthful look, but it's not really designed in order to try to cover up things on your face. I think that it's more designed to give your skin a more fresh and youthful look. And LYS has a new concealer that I think was just released, and this is called the Bright Start Airbrush Concealer, and it is $24, and so I am interested in looking into that one. And Makeup Forever has a new concealer, which I've actually heard almost nothing about, which is called HD Skin Waterproof Concealer. And that one looks like it probably sticks very tenaciously to my skin, so I'm not sure that I would be interested in that one. And then there is a new concealer from Estee Lauder, which is called the Double Wear Concealer. And I have tried that a couple of times in the store. And in general, I have never been a fan of the Double Wear foundation. I have found that that does irritate my skin quite a bit. And I also really do not like the way that that smells at all. And in the case of this concealer, I think that this was a lot less objectionable to me, and I don't think that it was irritating, and so I would be a little bit interested in picking this up and giving it a try. And then finally, Sephora Collection has a new concealer, and that is designed to go with that foundation, I think. And so this is called the Best Skin Ever Multi-Use Concealer, and it is priced at $16. And now setting sprays. And so this is a category of product that I never used to use at all because I found that almost all of the setting sprays that I found out in the world either had fragrance in them or alcohol, and that they all irritated my skin or that they did nothing. But I think last year or the year before, they came out with this Makeup by Mario setting spray, and I think this one has been really, really terrific. And so that does make it be a real game changer when it comes to using dewy foundations that don't set down, because there are a number of foundations out there that I would have a hard time wearing and that you start to feel like your hair is sticking to your face if you don't use a setting spray on them. And this one has been really terrific for me, and I did use this one today, and I use it very often. And I think that when it comes to this kind of foundation, this one does make a really big difference. I also do like the NARS setting spray, and this is called the NARS Light Reflecting Setting Spray, and I don't think I like it quite as much as the Makeup by Mario, but it is very close, and that is much better than the others that I've tried also. A new setting spray that was released this year is the Kosas Cloud Set Airy Setting Spray, and I was a bit dubious about that because it does include phenethyl alcohol on the ingredient list, and that's one reason that I don't feel as good about that Kosas color corrector as well, because that does have phenethyl alcohol in it. So phenethyl alcohol is probably made in a laboratory, but it is a chemical that is present in roses, and so it does have a rose scent to it. and I do find that that tends to irritate my skin. And in the case of this setting spray, I was very concerned about that, and so I did use it finally in the store, and I don't think that it irritated my skin, at least based on my experience there. And so I'm a little bit interested in picking that up. It is $36, and so that is a little bit expensive, and I was hoping that I could get maybe a sample of it. But other than that, I think it was performing really well, and it doesn't have any other ingredients in it that I would object to. And so I think that that is designed to be similar to this Makeup by Mario product. And now moving on to powder. So we will start with loose powder, and I was surprised at how much I liked this new calorie powder. And so this is called the Magic Hour Setting Powder. It comes in 2 different shades, and so the shade that I picked up is called Dawn, which is a slightly pink shade, but not too pink. And the thing that I know about this particular powder is that it has, I think, 8 different kinds of hyaluronic acid in it. And I think that that does make a big difference in terms of how this performs. And so I have used this with a variety of different foundations. And even today, I used it in conjunction with the Patrick Ta foundation after I put that setting spray on it. And it even seems to be working well with this. And so I do think that my skin tends to be so dry and to like hyaluronic acid so much that this is a particularly good powder for me. And I do like a lot of loose powders that are out there, but compared to many of the others, I think this one has actually been quite good. And I do like the container for this calorie powder, and so what it has is a net in it, and then to keep it contained in the net, it has a area on the cap that pushes down into the net, and so far it has been a lot less messy than many of the other powders that I've used. Another loose powder that I picked up that was released this year is the Kosas Cloud Set Loose Setting Powder, and this one is not available in regular skin tones. It's only available in powders that are supposed to be brightening, and so I picked up one that is called Translucent Candy, which is a pink shade, and then there's some that's yellow and some that's peach, and then there's some shades that are for darker skin tones. And so I think that's a little bit strange that they don't have regular skin tones, but they may feel like maybe we'll see that eventually. I do like the container that this is in. This is in a container that has a flip-up lid, and so you can very easily keep the powder in place and then only use a small amount of it. And so I think that this has been a very nice powder also, and that it has performed very similarly to the Kosas pressed powder or baked powder that I also have liked. And then a couple of other powders that I think are pretty good are the Laura Mercier Ultra Blur Loose Setting Powder and also the Makeup by Mario Setting Powder. And I actually just tried that Makeup by Mario Setting Powder again because I just did a video on Makeup by Mario in general. And I do think that that is a powder that works particularly well if you have a foundation that has a lot of dewiness to it. The only thing with that particular powder is that I'm not crazy about that container, and the powder does tend to make a kind of a big mess and to be a little bit difficult to use because of that, but it is a good powder. And so for loose powders that have been released this year, there is one that is called the Laura Mercier Secret Brightening Color Correcting Under Eye Setting Powder. And that one does contain talc in it, and otherwise I would have purchased it and used it because I did really like the way that it performed when I was in the store. But I, again, feel nervous about the talc in that one. I also picked up the YSL powder, and this is called the YSL All Hours Loose Setting Powder, and it is quite expensive. And I really wanted to like this powder, and I picked up one that is in a shade that is kind of bluish that I thought would be kind of fun. And I tried using it with the puff, and I tried using it with a brush, and I really wanted to like this, and I never felt like it really performed all that well for me. And I see that Sephora Collection has one more new product, and this is called the Sephora Collection Blur It Loose Setting Powder for $16. And this one, again, does not have talc in it, and it has several different kinds of hyaluronic acid in it. And so I think that it may be similar to the Caloray product, and so I would be interested in trying that one out to see how it compares. But I don't think the Caloray product is that expensive to begin with. And now for best pressed powder, I think that I will have to give this to the Kosas Cloud Set Baked Setting Powder. So this is a powder that I have used so many times and with so many different kinds of foundations and under so many different kinds of conditions. And I think that it has performed really well in all of those conditions. And so therefore, while it is not my ideal powder for every particular situation, I do think that it is such a versatile powder and it does perform so well that I really feel confident about it. Now, another powder that I have really liked that was released just a couple of months ago is the Say Slip Tint Baked Setting Powder. And so I did pick this one up. And my feeling about this one is that I'm less using this for oil control and that I'm more using it to have a really pretty but very natural finish on my skin. And so it doesn't have any kind of a shimmer in it like a finishing powder might. But I do think that the surface of my skin looks much prettier. And so I often use this just on my bare skin, even if I'm not wearing any foundation, or if I'm wearing a foundation that's performing pretty well, but I want it to look a little bit better, then I will use this one on the top of it. And I do think that this is very, very similar to the Pat McGrath Under Eye Setting Powder. They are both made in Italy. I wouldn't be surprised if they're both made in the same factory. And again, none of these products in this category have any talc in them. And I think that this is a really pretty product. And the Pat McGrath is one also. And I have used the Pat McGrath product on my whole face rather than just in my under eye area. And then another powder that was released earlier this year is the One Size Boucle Silk Airbrushed Talc-Free Finishing Powder. And that one seems to me like it may be similar to this Say product. I've only tried it out one time in the store, and it did seem fairly similar to me. And then finishing powders, as far as I'm concerned, are not really designed to bring up oil or address shine, but they're really designed just to give a small amount of reflect to your skin, and so therefore that they just look a little bit prettier. And especially if you have dry skin like mine, then that may be something that makes it look just a little bit better. And so one product that I really liked is from Laura Mercier, and so this one is called the Real Flawless Luminous Powder. And so I have been using this for quite a while, and this one actually looks reasonably well as a general purpose oil absorbing powder too, if I don't have too much oil on my skin. But it definitely has a little bit of shimmer on it, and so I'm really just using that to perk up my skin a little bit and to make it look a little bit better. And I think that this is fairly similar to the Hourglass powders. And so I do have this palette that just has powders in it, but you can buy the powders individually also. And I think that these actually have worked really, really well for me, and that I've used this more than the palettes from Hourglass that are like holiday palettes that I purchased in the past, because I do think that this finish to my skin looks really, really pretty. And so speaking of the Hourglass holiday palettes, I was thinking that I probably wouldn't pick one up this year because I'm not sure that I had really had great experiences with the ones that I've tried in the past. But I did try out the Deer palette when I went to my Ulta store, and I really, really liked it, even though I just put it on with my fingers. And so I did pick this one up, and I've actually really, really been enjoying this. And so I think that for those of us who do have very, very light skin, that this is finally one that may work for a lot of people. And I even feel like the bronzer in this one has worked really, really well for me. And then, of course, there are 3 other shades of this. The one that is available only on Sephora is called Horse, and that one has a variety of different shades that have been released in the past, so they are all existing shades, but they are their more popular shades. As a runner-up, I guess I will choose the Ilia Ethereal Baked Face Palette, which I have tried out at the store. Actually, this is the same face palette that they had last year, and I did try it out last year too. And I do like the way that these particular products perform in terms of their formula. It is the same formula that they are using in their baked blushes, and I think that those all in general look very nice, and it is possible to get a really muted and pretty look to them. I feel like the bronzer that is in the lightest shade for this one does not look really great on my skin, so I wouldn't be using that if I picked it up. I think it's the wrong color for me, but I could probably use it as an eyeshadow. And I think that the two shades of blush and the highlighter kind of looked okay on me. And so I would still be kind of interested in that, but I'm so happy with the Hourglass palette that I'm a little bit more inclined to just stick with that. And then some other face palettes that are currently available at Sephora. There is a new line of Dior Backstage Glow Maximizer face palettes. And so the original one, the universal one, seems to be pretty much exactly the same as before the reformulation. Maybe they didn't even reformulate that one. And then there are a whole bunch of new versions, and all of those, I did try them out at Sephora. All of those do have a lot of sparkle in at least one or two of the shades. And so therefore, if you want a highlighter that is going to be giving you a lot of sparkle and a lot of glitter type pieces to it, then those could be one to choose. But in my case, I'm not sure if I like all that glitter. I might think about it some more. Maybe I would be interested in that. I'm not sure. And then NARS has two different palettes that I think are still available at Sephora. So one of those is their new Christmas palette, which is called Ethereal Aura Blush Palette. And that one is only available in the darker shade at Sephora. And to get the lighter shade, it may only be available on the NARS website, and that is the one that I would want. And then there is one that is called the NARS Hot Escape Cheek Palettes, and these are several different versions of it, from lighter shades to darker shades. And I didn't feel like I was really crazy about the color selection in those. I feel like they ran kind of on the cool side for my own complexion, but I think a lot of people do like those. And then there is a new palette from Urban Decay, actually two new palettes. So this is called the Urban Decay Naked Shaped Palette. And this is supposed to have a variety of textures in it, including some creams and some powders. And one of the palettes is designed for cool skin, and one of the palettes is designed for warm skin, or at least warm color stories. And these are $56 each, and I'm not seeing any ingredients in them that concern me, especially. And so if I can find that in the store, I'd like to take a look at it. And then the other palette that has been pretty well talked about this year is the YSL Golden Oasis Face Palette, which is $85, and I did take a look at that at Sephora. And so this has three versions of their blush, and these are all existing shades, and then it has three highlighters, and at least one of those is an existing shade. And I'm not sure that I'm all that crazy about these YSL highlighters, and one of the shades of blush that is in that kit is one that I already had. That was Nude Lavalier. And I thought that one of the blush shades was way too dark for me and that I would never wear it. And I feel like that palette is kind of on the large and clunky side, so I decided to pass on that one. And one more face palette is from MPH by Mary Phillips, and this is an underpainting, highlight, and contour palette, and it also has an under eye color corrector. And so I did give this a try in the store, and my experience with this was that when I tried putting that product under my eyes, I do feel like it emphasized the texture under my eyes a lot, and so that makes me not very interested in using that product. And in general, I tend not to use contour products anyway, and so this would probably not be a product I would be interested in using regardless. And now moving on to bronzers. You know, I don't know that Sephora is my favorite place to buy bronzers, but there are a few there that I think would be possibilities. So for powder bronzers, what I'm primarily doing is using those to darken my skin a little bit and to simulate a tan. I'm not really looking to contour my face, and so that may be a little bit different than what some people are doing. And in terms of the powder bronzers that are sold at Sephora, the ones that I found that I like the most, which were released earlier this year, are the Laura Mercier Bronze Color Infusion. And so I do have two different colors of this. And so one of these is the one that is available at Sephora. And so this is shade 20, which is Marseille. And then there is actually another lighter version that I think is only available on the Laura Mercier website, or in any case not at Sephora. And this is 10, which is Saint Croix. And so therefore, if you're looking for the lightest shade in this, then Sephora would not be the place to get it. I do feel like both of these bronzers have worked okay for me, and the undertones do seem to be pretty much the same. And so I'm not saying that people with light skin should not be buying this from Sephora, but I do think it's important to know that there's a lighter shade available. And so this particular bronzer has two different shades in it. One of those is more like a very muted blush that has more pink in it. And then the other one is not real gray, so I don't feel like it must be used as a contour, but it is more like a traditional bronzer that could also be used as a contour. And some people are saying that if they blend these two different shades together, that they get a particularly good shade for them. In my case, I actually feel like if I use them separately, it's worked better for me. And that if I use the pinker shade as more like a blush, and then I use the bronzer shade a little bit further down and as like a really, really mild contour, that's been a little bit better for me personally. But in any case, I think that this is a very nice formula, and I have enjoyed using them. House Labs has a bronzer that has a formula that I think is really, really terrific. It has a lot of skincare type ingredients in it, and so it is really soft, and I think it's really pretty on the skin. And in the past, they seem to be only designed to be used as pretty heavy contours. And then this past year, they redid all the colors. And so now for the lighter colors, they have, for lighter skin, there's two different colors. And so one of those is called Soleil Sand, and one of those is a little bit more reddish to it, and this one is called Bronzed Umber. And so if I want to get a reddish bronze, sort of slightly sunburned look, then I can use this Bronzed Umber one. And this Soleil Sand one, I feel like it's a little bit gray, but I feel like it sort of still works as a regular bronzer also for me. And then two more bronzers that are released in previous years that I've been able to make work for me. One of those is the YSL All Hours Hyper Glow bronzer. I think that one's quite nice, and I have both the lightest shade in that and the second lightest shade, and both of those have worked okay for me. And then the Fenty Sunstalker bronzer, that one has been okay for me also. I think that's quite nice. And for cream or liquid bronzers, the one that I have really been liking quite a lot is from Westman Atelier. And so this came out in the spring of last year, and it sold out really quickly, and then eventually they did get some more in. And I feel like this has worked really, really well on my skin. And I have the lightest shade of this one, and it does have just a little bit of pinkiness to it. And I think that it has looked really natural on my skin, and it blends in really easily. And my skin has not been irritated by it, and I think that this has been really, really fantastic. And so even though it is does have a really short shelf life, so it's only supposed to last for 6 months, so far it has been fine for me. I have had it for more than 6 months, and I do feel really good about this, and I would buy this again. I think this is really a fantastic product. I also have liked the CeraCreel product that is called Sculpting Cream Bronzer. And so again, I do think that these tend to be a little bit more designed for contour than what I'm really looking for, and that I would be happier if they were a little bit less gray personally. But I do have two different shades of these, and so one of these is a lighter shade, and then this one, The medium shade has a bit of reddishness in again, and so I do feel like that one actually works a little bit better for me in terms of it looking a little bit less gray and more reddish and slightly sunburned. And the good thing about these bronzers is that they do have a lot of skincare ingredients in them, and so they do go on and they look a little bit glowy and hydrated and glassy looking, and they have some peptides in them, and so they should be good for the skin as well. And then the other two products, one is by Makeup by Mario, and this is the Soft Sculpt Skin Enhancer, and I did just talk about this in my most recent video where I talked about Makeup by Mario, and this is a very thin and slippy type of a formula that is very, very easygoing and that I do think looks very nice and very natural on my skin, and so therefore, especially since I do have light skin, that is a good way to get just a hint of bronzing without going overboard with it, and I do think it's been good for my skin as well. And Rare Beauty is really known for their bronzer stick, and I finally did pick that one up, and I have had good experiences with that as well. And then some additional bronzers that have been released this year include, first of all, the Fair Homedy Essential Bronzer Compact, and that is $78, which is quite expensive. And at first I was not really interested in that because they do list fragrance on the ingredient list, but after I heard a number of people really like that bronzer, both in terms of the formula and especially in terms of the lightest shade, I did become more interested in it, and I wrote to Fair Homedy and I asked them about the fragrance, and they said that it is a natural fragrance, which sometimes is okay for my skin. And so I am interested in ordering that one, and it has been out of stock for a while, but I am hoping to be able to pick it up fairly soon. And I did receive a report that you can use this bronzer even if you don't buy the case, and I also already have a case for Fair Homedy products from their concealer that I am not using, and so probably I will just pick up the refill for this and see how this works out for me. Another bronzer that I've been a little bit interested in is the Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt Talc-Free Blurring Bronzer, and that came out earlier this year, and I've tried it a few times at Sephora, and I think that that is a fairly nice product. I wasn't really excited about it when I tried it on, but I might pick that up during the Sephora sale just so that I can have it for comparison to the other bronzers in my collection when I do bronzer videos. And Vanngo has a bronzer in his line, and so this is called the Soft Focus Blurring Matte Powder Bronzer, and I haven't gotten a clear sense with regard to what color that is in terms of the undertone for light skin tones, and so I don't know if that would work out well for me, and I wish that I could try out some of these Vanngo products in the store before committing to all of them, but I am interested in that bronzer as well. There have been a couple of products that were released just for contouring, and so the first one is the Isamaya Sculpting Stick, and I think that this may be the most popular product that Isamaya is offering, and from what I have seen about it, if I were interested in contouring, that would probably be a very good product to do that with, but I haven't picked that one up because I tend not to be that interested in contouring my face. And then in addition, Haus Labs has a line of contouring products, and these are called the Precision Sculpt Contour Sticks, and so there were several of these, and I did try these out at Sephora, and my experience was that these were really, really gray, and so if I were to use them, they would definitely provide a pretty distinct contouring look for me, and that is not something that I am really interested in, but if you're looking for a really kind of sculpted or chiseled type of a look, then I think that could be something to look at. And in general, I do like Haus Labs as a brand, even though I'm not that interested in this product. And then next we have Best Powder Blush, and I did think about this for quite a bit because there have been a number of good new powder blushes that have been released over the past couple of years, and I think that I really have to give this to Westman Atelier. Even though this particular duo is $75, I do think that the more that I use this, the more that I like it. And it is very finely milled, and I think that the colors are really on point. So the only one that I picked up so far is the one that has Coquette and Mimi in it. But I am really interested in picking up the other shade that is has two shades that look brown to my eyes, because every time I have used that in the store, I think that that has worked really well too. And so even though this is very, very expensive, I do think that Westman Atelier did a really, really good job with this particular product. And so 3 of these have 2 shades of blush, and then 3 of them have 1 shade of blush and 1 shade of contour. And I'm not really interested in contouring my face, so I'm not really all that interested in picking those up. But it does seem to me, based on my experiences using it in the store, that if you do want just a little bit of hint of contour, that this would be a good way to do it very easily. And the YSL blushes that I mentioned before were released this year, and so I did pick up 2 different versions of these. And so one of them is Nude Lavalier, and then this one I think is called Rose Haze. And so one of these is a shimmer blush and one of these is a matte blush, and I think they both performed really well. These do have some talc in them, but I'm using such a small amount of this blush, and I don't think I'm breathing in any significant amount of it. So I'm not really concerned about the talc, and I do think that when I use these, that they go on my skin really easily and they blend in really easily. But I think that an awfully lot of the colors, especially the ones that are available in the US, do look like they are very bright, and so those have worked less well for me when I've tried them out in the store. And there is one more shade that is fairly new that I would be interested in picking up, but I think that these shades that I have are the ones that are going to work out best for me. And then, as I mentioned before, Ilia has that face palette, and then they have a line of blush. And so this is called the Soft Focus Blurring Blush, and I picked this up in the most muted shade, which is called Glimpse. And I do really, really like this in terms of it putting a really, really muted type of a color on my cheeks. And they do have a bunch of other colors, and they have several different colors that I think would work well for me. And so I would be interested in picking up some more of these. Although what I will say is that when I've used them in the store, I'm not sure that I'm seeing all that much of a difference between these different muted colors, but I still really like this formula quite a lot. And so I'm definitely open to getting some more of these. And then last year, Kosas released a line of blushes, and these are called Blushes Life, and they are baked blushes, and they come in these cute little containers. And they started out with 8 different shades, but then they released some additional shades, so there may be 12 shades now. And I picked up all 4 of the lightest shades of these, and I do really, really like them. I think that they look really great on my skin, and they are really easygoing, and I just think that they perform really, really well, and that I was kind of surprised at how much I like these. And then the last blush that is on my list is the NARS Talc-Free Blush. And I think that the formula for these are okay. I don't think that I like the formula for those quite as much as I like some of these other blushes. But the thing about NARS is that they do have a really wide variety of different kinds of blush in terms of the colors. And so therefore, especially if you are looking for a color of blush that you may not be able to get from anywhere else, I would suggest taking a look at the NARS blushes. Another line of blushes was reformulated last year, and these are the Dior Rosy Glow Powder Blush. And so I think that these were reformulated actually last year, and the reformulation was a total disaster, and so they gave it another go. And so I did pick up one of the new ones, and this is in the shade called Toffee, and I do think that it's better than it was last year. I wouldn't say that it was my favorite blush even now, but I do think it is wearable, and I do kind of like this color. I think this color is very pretty. This blush does smell like raspberries. It has raspberry ketones in it, and I don't find it to be objectionable, but it does have a scent to it. And Saie has a line of blushes that is called the Super Suede Talc-Free Powder Blush, and I feel like the formula is somewhat similar to the formula of that powder that I did like quite a lot, and I think that these are nice also. The issue with these is that I do feel like all of the shades are kind of on the bright side. The one that I got was the lightest, and this one is called Mia, And there was another one that was called Chow that was more of a brown color that I also would be interested in. But in general, I think that I would have been happier if they had had more shades that were more on the muted side. But I do think that this performs well and that it looks pretty on my skin. And Tower 28 came out with a new line of blushes. And so these are called the Get Set Matte Powder Blush. And I think that they are supposed to be the same formula as their setting powder. And I found that the blushes were a little bit better on my skin than the setting powder, maybe because I was using a smaller amount of it than I was using with the setting powder. But I think that they were okay. The issue for me with this particular blush is that it did break for me, and I didn't even drop it or anything. I think it was just in my makeup basket. And so I did order another one of these, and I do like the particular shade that I got, which is called Long Beach Iced Tea, I think. And so it's kind of a brown shade, and I did really like that one. And a lot of people do really, really like these, and they are only $20. But what I would suggest is just being careful with them because I think they do have the potential of breaking really easily. And Vanngo is new at Sephora, and I haven't yet tried anything from them, but I have watched a lot of YouTube reviews because they did send out a lot of PR to some people. And so they do have a blush, and the blush has been getting very good reviews. It is called the Vanngo Very Beautiful Matte Velvet Blush, and I at first thought that those colors were way too bright and that I would have a hard time with them, but it does seem like some of the people with light skin seem to be doing okay with that blush. And so as the products that have been released seem to be going, I think that that one does have some potential. So I would be interested in picking that up. And now let's move on to cream blush. And so my favorite cream blush for quite a long period of times is the Westman Atelier Baby Cheeks Blush Stick. And I do have all of the different colors I think that they have ever released in this. And it is a product that I like very much. And I think that this is a product that, even though it goes on my skin very easily and it blends in really easily, I do feel like it stays in place a lot better than a lot of other cream blushes that are out there. And I also do really like the colors of these, and I like the way that they look on my skin because it does give a very soft and sort of an ethereal look. And even though I have all of the colors of these, and even though some of them are fairly bright, I do feel like I can use all of those colors and that they blend in really easily and that they actually look nice on me. And the blush that I have found that I think is the most like the Westman Atelier, but that is not as expensive, are the blushes from Rhode. And so these are called the Pocket Blushes, and I don't like the container as much as the Westman Atelier blushes. This is not very expensive plastic, and I think that the shape is kind of awkward, but the blush inside here is quite nice. And I just have one color so far, which is Freckle, but they did come out with a few new shades when they launched at Sephora, and I am interested in some of those shades. And this is a fairly reasonably priced blush for $25, and so I am interested in picking up at least one more shade during the Sephora sale. And a blush that was released this year that I've really been liking is the reformulation of the NARS Multiple Blush. And I picked this one up in a new shade, which is called Orgasm Crave, which is a peachy pink shade, but it doesn't have as much shimmer in it as the old Orgasm. And I found it to be really attractive on my skin, and it doesn't really look shimmery, but I do think it looks just very pretty. And they have a whole bunch of different shades in this, and I have liked all of the shades when I've tried them in the store, and so I am actually interested in maybe buying another one of these, and I will have to think about which shade that might be. But the shade from them that I think would be a little different than this one but still pretty for me is Dolce Vita, and so I might pick up that one or maybe one of the other ones as well. And then another blush that I've been using for quite a while and that I've been liking are the Merit blushes, which are called the Flush Balms. And so I do have a really wide variety of shades in this, and I think that they look really pretty on the cheeks, and they are very blendable, and they do not look too dark for me regardless of what color I am using. I think that the only issue with this is that it doesn't last for quite as long as some of these other blushes, and I do feel like I have to keep a little bit of an eye on it to make sure that I'm not wearing any kind of blush at all, but sometimes I will use this in conjunction with the powder blush underneath, and I think that that works pretty well. Another cream blush that I've really liked are the Haus Labs Color Fuse blush sticks, and I have been using these for a few years, and in the past they were available really in bright shades, and so I was able to get some use out of those, but I don't think that they were ideal for me. But this year they did come out with some that are more like bronzer blushes, and I have really liked those, and I think that that kind of a more muted blush looks really good on my skin. And so there are 4 different shades, and I picked up 3 of these because I did like them very much. And so for instance, this is one that is called Glassy Ginger, which is a pinky brown color, and then the other colors are a bit darker, and I think that this is a really good blush and that it looks really good on my skin. It doesn't last quite as well as some of the other blushes in my collection, but I sometimes do wear it in combination with the powder blush, and I think that that works out pretty well. And then after putting some thought into it, I decided to create a separate category of blush, which I'm calling Dewy Blush. And so this is a category where the blushes they have a substantial amount of color to them, but they also are providing a dewy type of a look that is sort of like a dewy highlighter. And I am finding that I am especially liking that kind of a look because it provides a moist and plumped up look on my skin that I think is really attractive and that is more youthful. And so the blushes that I think have been particularly good at this are the ones from Goop, and so these are called Color Blur blushes, and so I have a couple of these. So I have one of them in a color that is called Whiskey, which is a brownish color, and one that is in a color that is called Slipper, and I have found both of these to be very nice on my skin. And another blush that I think does that fairly well is this one from Natasha Denona, and this is called the High Blush Cream Cheek Duo. And so this one actually does have a highlighter in it that's a little bit shimmery, but the blush for this one, I think it is a little bit more creamy than most of the blushes that I have used, and I think that this one is a blush that I don't think I really appreciated when it came out because it was during the winter and all of the blushes in this line lean to be quite peach. But over time, I did find that this was a really attractive blush, especially when we got into summer, because it does have that peachiness to it that I associate with summer. And I do like the way that this looks on my skin in terms of providing a kind of a creamy and plumped up look. And I think that this is also something that the blushes from Isamaya give me. So this one, those actually do have a blush that is color, and then they have a highlighter balm in them as well. And so those are called the Isamaya Skin Enhancing Duos, and I do think that my skin looks really good when I wear that blush. And that makes me a little bit interested in picking up another one of them. And then there's also a product that I have used that is called the It Cosmetics Sun Blush, and I do think that this is really pretty as well on my skin. And then another cream blush that was released this year that I tried out is the Charlotte Tilbury Unreal Lip Plus Cheek Glow Blush, and this is in a stick format, and I did try this one out, and I don't think that the formula is too bad, but the issue with this blush for me is that all of the colors are quite bright, and I think that I did try them out at Sephora, and I really felt like none of those colors really looked very good on my skin. It was giving me a very bright blush that was not very easy to blend. I did pick up this one, which is a red shade. It's called Cherry Glaze, I think, and I don't mind red blush on me as much as I do a number of other colors, but again, I think that this is on the bright side, and so I haven't worn it all that much. But I would be interested in this particular product if they were to come out with some more muted shades or Pillow Talk or something like that, because I think that the formula for the product is okay. It's just that I don't feel like it's really made for me. I feel like it's made really entirely for people with much darker skin than I have, or else that really like a lot of blush on their skin. And then Glossier came out with a line of blushes that are called Cloud Paint Plush Blush. And so these blushes are sort of a combination between a powder blush and a cream blush. And so they are a product that you could put on with your fingers, but you can also use a brush with them. And I do think that a lot of these colors look like they might work for me. The one that I bought was the most muted one, which is called Gale. And I do think that that was really pretty on my skin. And I think that this is a perfectly good blush, and that it's not quite making its way into my top blushes of all compared to everything that has been released, but I do really like it, and I think this is a very nice product, and it's not too expensive. And then another product that I really liked is this blush from Bobbi Brown. And so this is called the Pot Rouge Velvet Matte for Lips and Cheeks. And I was especially appreciative of the fact that this does not have any fragrance in it. So the old Pot Rouge, they do have fragrance in them that I'm not crazy about. But this one has been fine, and it has no fragrance at all. And it is a blush that is kind of creamy, and it is, I think, very pretty on my skin. I picked up the shade that is called Tea Rose, and I actually would be interested in picking up another shade of this, but I am not sure that I really like any of the other shades that I see on the website. But in general, I do like the formula for this one a lot. It does blend in really easy, and it gives me a really pretty and easygoing blush that I have really enjoyed. And then another company that has released a blush that is sort of halfway between a cream and a powder is Rare Beauty. And so this blush is called the Matte Bouncy Blush. And I have this in the shade Hope, which is really the only shade that I think is appropriate for people with a lighter skin tone like I have. And I think that this is not a bad blush either. Most of the Rare Beauty blushes tend to be really bright, and so that is a disincentive for me to use them. But I think that this one is kind of nice, and I've enjoyed using this one. And Summer Fridays has a blush that I've tried out in the store, and this is called the Summer Fridays Blush Butter Balm, and it is $26. And I kind of liked it in the store. I was a little suspicious about how long it was going to last on my cheeks, but I did like the way that it looked. And now that I've been thinking about this idea of dewy blush, I think that that definitely falls into that category, and so I feel like maybe I should pick that up during the Sephora sale because it's not real expensive, and give it more of a try. And then I also see that Anastasia Beverly Hills has a blush that is called the Magic Touch Cream Blush and Lip Trio, and I haven't actually tried that one out or seen it in the store, and so when I go back to Sephora next time, I'm going to try to take a look at that. And in terms of liquid blush, the one that I have liked the most in the past is the Charlotte Tilbury Matte Beauty Blush Wand, and that is fairly expensive. It's $42, but I think that it is a lovely product, and I have that in the shade that was called Pillow Talk, and so I do think it looks really natural on my skin. It's a pinky brown type of a color, and it is in a package where there's a little sponge on the end, and so you press the sponge into your skin and then kind of like rub it in with your fingers or a brush, and I think that that has worked out really well for me. The only issue with these particular products from Charlotte Tilbury is that that sponge does get kind of grungy, and so it doesn't last forever, but I do really like the formula for that, and I do really enjoy using it. And then there are several other liquid blushes that I have really liked, and one thing about liquid blush is that they do tend to last pretty well on the skin, and so that is a pretty big advantage compared to cream blushes, especially since these do tend to be kind of dewy looking. And so I have liked the Glossier Cloud Paints, and I have had a number of different shades of those over time, and I do think that they are very pretty. They do come in little tubes though, and so that is a little bit messier to work with than some of these other application methods, but I do still like those blushes quite a bit. And then, of course, Rare Beauty is known for their blushes, which are called the Soft Pinch Liquid Blush. And the thing about those is that they are very, very bright and highly saturated. And so you really only need a very, very small amount of that product. And so if I am very careful with it, I think that it does blend in fairly easily. And so I do like it. I think that most of the shades are probably inappropriate for me, though. And they do sell really small containers of those. And so considering how saturated they are, a small container will still last me for quite a long period of time. And so if you're looking for a tiny little gift for yourself or for someone else, then that is a fairly good price, especially if you can get it on discount. And then Say also has a line of blushes, and these are called the Dew Blush, and I do think that those colors are pretty and that they tend to be really well liked by many different people. And you can generally get those in a kit during the Sephora sale, and they do have a kit available this year. And another liquid blush that was released this year is from ABH, and this is called the Blurring Serum Liquid Blush, and I did like this one also. And this one is a little bit easier to put on because even though it is in a tube, it does have a really long needle, and so you can get a very small amount of it and put it right on your skin. And so I have really liked that applicator quite a lot. And then finally for this video, we'll talk about highlighters. And in my mind, I tend to intuitively divide highlighters into two different categories. And so one of those are highlighters that are more dewy and that do provide a kind of a glassy finish to the skin, and that may or may not have a bit of shimmer in them. And then the second group is highlighters that are primarily providing some shimmer. And so one highlighter that I have really, really liked that I think falls into the dewy category are the ones from Westman Atelier. And so these are called the Lit Up Highlight Sticks, and they used to have just a couple colors in those, but now they have come out with a whole bunch of different colors, and I have found that I really like all of them, and I've actually picked up all of them. And so this one, for instance, is a shade that is called Petal, and so it does give a considerable amount of dew to the skin, but it also has a little bit of a pinky color to it. And another highlighter that I think falls more into the dewy category, even though it does have a fair amount of shimmer, is the one from Sarah Creel. And so this formula is very similar to the bronzer formula, except that it is available with just a little tiny bit of color to it and some shimmer and some dew to it. And so this one is called Today's Highlights, and the shade that I have is This Just In. And I think that this has been very pretty. And like the bronzer, this does have some peptides in it, and so I think it is good for my skin, and so that's a good reason to be using it. One of the most popular products from Dr. Barbara Sturm is their highlighter, and this is called the Glow Drops. And so this is a serum type of a product, and it does have some skincare ingredients in it, and then it has a little bit of mica. And so I wouldn't wear this one if I were wearing a foundation, especially if I'm wearing a silicone foundation, because I think that it would be really pointless to be using a product this expensive if it's not going to actually get to your skin. But I think on a day when I'm not wearing any makeup, this is actually a really nice product, and it just provides a little bit of a glow that I think is very pretty. And again, it does have some skincare ingredients in it. And in general, I have liked the Dr. Barbara Sturm products. I think that especially with regard to making my skin less sensitive, that these have been really good for that. And then there are a couple of other highlighters that are similar to this that are in stick form. And so one of these is the Violette FR Baume Sheen Highlighter Balm, and that one is really the product from Violette FR that I like the most and that I have used the most, and it is fairly reasonably priced. And then another highlighter stick that is very similar, I think, is the one from Vanngo People, which is called the Dewy Glow Highlighter. And that one comes in a plain color with just a little bit of a shimmer to it, and then it comes in some shades that have a little bit of a pinky type color to them as well. And then when it comes to shimmery highlighters, the one that I actually like the most for this purpose is actually one that is labeled as being a foundation stick. And so this is from Charlotte Tilbury. And I definitely think that this product is much too shimmery to use as a foundation all over my face. And I wouldn't use it for concealing purposes because it would be highlighting all of the areas of my skin that have problems. But I do think that if I use this just as a regular highlighter and I just put it in the areas of my face that I do want to highlight, I think that this has a very muted type of a look that is exactly what I'm looking for. And I do like the formula of this. I think it's very gentle for my skin and it does blend in very easily. And what I especially do like about this is that it does come in a wide variety of skin tones, and so I was able to pick up one that I think is quite close to my own skin tone, and I think that that makes a big difference because since it's so close to my skin tone, it looks very natural to me. And so this is called the Unreal Skin Sheer Glow Tint, and the shade that I have is the second lightest shade, which is called Light, and I do think that this is very pretty. And then there are two other products from Charlotte Tilbury that I also would put on this list. This is mostly what I like from Charlotte Tilbury, are these highlighters and that one blush. And so the two products are, first of all, the Charlotte Tilbury Beauty Light Wand. So this is very similar to that liquid blush, but it is in a shimmery highlighter, and I don't think that those are too shimmery for me in general, and I do think that they are really pretty. And this year at Sephora, they do have a little kit where you can get two of those in two different shades. One is called Spotlight and one is called Pinkasm, I think. And they are minis, but with these I feel a little uncomfortable using them for very long anyway because that sponge tip can get dirty. And so I feel like purchasing those mini versions is a good idea because then you aren't going to be using them for as long. And then there also is the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter, and of the products that are at Sephora anyway, I do particularly like that particular liquid highlighter, and I do think that it works nicely on my skin, either on a spot basis or on a spot basis but underneath a foundation. And another product that I've really liked, and that would be the winner in this category if it weren't for that Charlotte Tilbury foundation stick, is the one from Westman Atelier. And this one is called the Super Loaded Tinted Highlight. And this is very expensive. It's $75. But I think that it is, again, a very nice product to use just in a very small amount. Gucci Westman says that this is like a closer, so it's what she puts on at the end of the look. And I do think that it makes a big difference in terms of how polished and pretty it looks. And this is available in several different colors. And I do have, I think, 4 of these, even though they are very expensive because I have really enjoyed them. The ones that I have, there is a very slight scent to them, and I think that it is a natural scent, but it does have a little bit of a flavor type scent to it. And then a product that came out last year that I think is fairly similar to the Westman Atelier but not quite as expensive are the highlighters from Ilia, which are called Ilia Light Shift Cream Highlighters. And I picked up one of those, and I think that that is very pretty, and it gives a similar type of a look to my face. And then there have been a few additional highlighters that have been released this year. So the first one is from Glossier, and this is called the Future Dew Solid. And I've never been a big fan of the Future Dew liquid product. I think that that does not perform very well on my skin at all. But this one wasn't too bad. And so this does provide somewhat of a dewy look, and it does have a little bit of shimmer in it, and it's a little bit of a peach color. And I think that that one is attractive on my skin. I don't think it's my favorite of the ones that I've tried, but as dewy highlighters go, I think that this one is definitely usable. And then House Labs is usually one of my favorite brands, and this year they came out with a line of several different shades of highlighter, and this is called the House Labs Bio Radiant Glassy Balm Highlighter Stick, and these are $30. And so I did try all of these out in the store on my skin because I really kind of wanted them to make them work because House Labs products usually work well for me. And most of them have a lot of shimmer in them, and almost all of them have some color in them. And I feel like I wasn't really liking the way that they looked on my skin. I'm not sure why that was. Maybe it was because of the particular shades in them. I think the one that was just shimmer wasn't too bad, but the one that I ended up picking up is this one, which is just plain. It doesn't have any shimmer or any color in it, and so you were just getting dew from it. And this is the only product that I have that doesn't have any kind of shimmer or color in it at all, and I think it's kind of okay on my skin, and sometimes I have used it, but in general I think that this line was not as impressive to me as most of the Haus Labs products are. And Patrick Ta re-released his line of products that are called the Major Glow Highlighter Duos. And so these came out, I think, a year or two ago, and then they decided to re-release them. And what this consists of is a quite shimmery powder type of a highlighter, and then a balm type of a highlighter that you can put on over it. And so you are getting a lot of shimmer and then some of that glassy, balmy look. And I tried some of those in the store, and I think there might be potential, but I wasn't real crazy about any of the colors that were available. There is one color that I'm still interested in, which is called Sugar, and that one seems to be totally sold out, both in the Patrick Ta website and the Sephora website and in my local Sephora store. But I'm still a little bit interested in that. But again, it is a very, very shimmery highlighter, and so that is really not what I'm looking for. But the good thing is that it doesn't have any fragrance in it. Most of Patrick Ta's products do have fragrance in them, and so that makes me a little more inclined to give it a good go, especially since I do like some of the other Patrick Ta products, including their eyeshadow toppers and their foundation. And Isamaya has a product that I have not tried, which is called Face Glaze, and so that does look like a product that you're supposed to put on at the end of the look to give your face a little bit more of a shine or a shimmer type of a look. And so I am a little bit interested in that, but I'm not sure that it has gotten good enough reviews that I'm really willing to spring for it without actually trying it in a store first. And I have not ever seen Isamaya in any of the Sephora stores that I've gone to. And as I mentioned earlier, YSL came out with the whole line of powder highlighters, and I have tried several different shades on in the store, and I feel like they looked a little bit kind of chalky on my skin. They do have a lot of color in the base, and I think that that may be an issue, and they are pretty sparkly as well. And so, at least so far, I don't feel like I've been really inclined to actually buy those. And then another product that I've tried out a few different times because it is in my local Ulta store is the Benefit Glow La La Blurring Powder Highlighter. And generally speaking, Benefit products do not work very well for me. They do tend to irritate my skin, but this one seemed to be fine in terms of the irritation aspect, and the ingredient list looks okay. And I think that it was fairly similar to, for instance, the NARS highlighters that are also sold in my local Ulta. But of the highlighters that are sold in my local Ulta, I really think that I'm liking the Polite Society one, which is also new. And so if I pick up a super shimmery highlighter, I'm probably going to pick up that Polite Society one. But the Benefit is another pretty shimmery highlighter that if you're looking for that one, it's better than I anticipated. So that is the end of part one of this video, and so I thank you for watching, and I hope that if you like the video that you will click like, and if you are not subscribed to the channel yet, then I hope you will do that. And also I do have a Facebook group, and the Facebook group is called 40 Plus Beauty with Lisa Peterson, and so I hope that if you are on Facebook and you're interested that you will join me there. And Coco and I do love you very much, and so thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in part 2 of this video. Goodbye. La